In today's subscriber story, the principal gets caught doing something they shouldn't do. Enjoy the story. So this story all started off with a new principal, right? So basically the subscriber told me that the last principal had been at his school for many, many years. I think it was like 20 or something, and they were just moving on to different things at this point. So the next year rolled around and they got a new principal. And this new principal, this guy was pretty young. He was probably like 25, 27, maybe like early 30s. And his name, let's just call him Mr. Herman. So Mr. Herman was a cool guy. He was pretty young. He was, he kind of like got it, if you know what I mean, because he was like just, he wasn't just in school. He was in like some graduate program for something. He was a smart guy too, but he was also a pretty young guy, especially for the principal's position. You normally think of the principal being at least like, later on in their career because you need some experience. But apparently he had, done some, impressive stuff before, and he managed to get the job. So, he was pretty cool. Like, everyone kind of liked Mr. Herman. Like, he wasn't strict. He wasn't, like, anything like that. Obviously, he did his job, and he was, like, pretty good. And, you don't really see the principal too much in school, like, unless you're getting in trouble and, like, the principal has to deal with you. Principal is more, like, head of administration stuff in a lot of cases. But, Mr. Herman actually made a pretty big, attempt to go out and like meet people. And he was actually like overall really chill, apparently. That's at least what the subscriber told me. You can submit your own stories on my Instagram in the description. Anyways, all the interactions the subscriber had with the principal before the story I'm about to tell you were really good, and he seemed like a pretty chill guy. So also during this time, the subscriber was in an English class, and this English class was really hard. Like, English classes can either be pretty simple or they can be like really, really hard, man. Like, if the teacher's like really, really strict on how good they are, obviously, right? So the teacher was a really good teacher. He was really smart, but unfortunately, sometimes that means that they're also very tough when it comes to grading. And yeah, that was unfortunately the case for this teacher. So, the subscriber he had a pretty big paper, and it was due in a couple days, and he just wanted it like to go over it with the teacher. And so there's a couple other students that asked the same thing. So the teacher decided that, okay, guys, like tonight, if you guys are all free, come back to the school around 7. I'm going to have the keys. We're going to unlock the classroom, and we're just going to be here for like an hour or 2 hours, just going over all the papers. I'll give you all the feedback. You guys can even sit here and write and ask for like immediate feedback if you'd like. And he opened it up to the whole class, and it really was only the subscriber and 2 other people that took advantage of it, which was kind of crazy because it was a really good opportunity. But obviously, like, 7 at night on a school night, maybe it wasn't convenient for everyone, and people probably just didn't want to come down all the way back to school. Anyways, though, so that night, the subscriber, 2 other people, and the English teacher, who I'm just going to call the English teacher, right? They all decided that they'll come down around 7, they'll go to the classroom, and they'll work on the paper. So the subscriber, a couple other kids, and the English teacher, they all get down there around 7, and the subscriber and the kids get there a little bit earlier, and they're just waiting at the door. And the English teacher gets there, he pulls up, he's like, "Hey guys, like, so glad you came, like, you guys will probably have better grades than the other people for coming, so, good on you." And they all kind of like laugh and smile a little bit. And the English teacher pulls out his key, and he goes to put it in the door, and he kind of like holds down on the handle, and the handle gives. And he just opens the door. He's like, "Oh, this is really weird. It's unlocked. Like, this really shouldn't be unlocked." Like, I don't know who the last person out of here was, but they obviously didn't lock it. And the cleaning people come in the morning, not at night, so it really should be locked. And he said, "Okay, I'll just report this to front desk tomorrow. Like, it didn't get locked or whatever, and they should just make sure that happens. No big deal." So then they kind of just like walk in, and the English teacher thinks honestly nothing of it, or at least he doesn't say anything about it. And, the subscriber was like a tad suspicious, but he also didn't really think that much of it. So what they do is they just go in, and they're walking down the halls, and they get to the classroom. So the subscriber, the other guys bring out their backpacks, they take out their laptops, and the subscriber's like, "Okay, so-and-so, you can go first. I'll work a little bit more, and then I'll ask my questions." And the other kid's like, "Yeah, okay, that sounds good." So they're sitting there, and then the subscriber is sitting there, and when you like have a song stuck in your head, and you think you like faintly hear it, but it's like not you're just listening, you're just thinking of it really hard, and it almost sounds like it's faintly there. So the subscriber was faintly hearing this song in the background, but he just kept thinking about it, and he's like, "Okay, I must have a really active imagination." And then he like thinks about it for a second. He's like, "No, I'm actually hearing music very faintly." And he's like, okay, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. So he turns to like the other kid who's there, who's not getting help. He's like, hey, like, listen really closely, like really carefully right now. And the other kid's like, okay. And he's like, do you hear like a faint, do you hear music really faintly? And the kid like sits there for a second and he's like, yeah, no, actually, I that's really strange. I do hear music. So they're like, okay, the music is real. Why do we hear music? So the English teacher is kind of like in the middle of helping, the other kid with his paper, but the subscriber thought, okay, this might be important enough to interrupt. So he's like, hey, like, sorry to interrupt, but can you guys just like be quiet for a second and listen and tell me if you hear anything? Because he didn't want to say music necessarily, just in case. He didn't want to put something into their heads and make them think they're hearing something they're not. And then the teacher's like, yeah, no, I do hear something. And he's like, music, right? And the teacher's like, yeah, why do I hear music? And he's like, so he goes to check the windows because at first he thinks like that there might be like music or something coming from outside. And he checks the windows and they're shut. And he's like, okay. And he actually like, they all kind of like stand there and think about it for a second. And directionally, the music is not coming from outside. It's coming from down the hall. And they realize this all kind of at the same time, and they look at each other. And the subscriber's like, I think the music's coming from inside the school. And the subscriber's like, okay, I like, not to interrupt, but I want to go see where that is. And the teacher's like, yeah, actually, me too. This might be something I need to report. And the other kids are like, they're not just going to sit there while everyone goes on like a secret mission to like go figure out where the music is. So the other kids come as well. So they're kind of stealthily walking around, following the trail of the music. They go down a hall, and then it gets a little, quieter. So they turn around, they go the other way, and they're kind of just like, it's like the Marco Polo game. They're trying to like figure out where this sound is coming from, and they keep getting closer and closer, and gets louder and louder, and then they eventually get down this hall, and they turn the corner, and they are looking like straight down this hall, and it's like a conference room, right? It's like some kind of like conference room that's pretty big, and the door is locked, and you can hear the music muffled, and you can also see like lights or whatever. You can also start to hear people talking as well. And it was pretty clear that like somebody was hosting a party in the school. So obviously, right, this was completely, against the rules. And the teacher at first thought it was like a bunch of kids or whatever. Because, right, the school, one, you can't host a party in the school without asking someone. You probably can't host a party even if you ask someone. But especially like after school hours, like basically the teacher was convinced that they broke in. That's why the door was unlocked or whatever. And ended up just like deciding to throw a party, which, would be completely against the rules. So he was starting to get a little bit upset, right? The teacher was like, all right, I got to bust this. And the kids are like, all right, like, I mean, we're here, but go ahead. So the teacher, right? So the English teacher starts walking kind of quickly up to the door. The other kids kind of sneak a little bit behind him because they're really curious. And they're kind of like walking really quickly. And the door to the conference room where the party's happening, it opens. And all of a sudden, the teacher turns around like super quickly, and just like the other kids, when they notice who's coming out of the door, they also just like completely do a 360. They all kind of like fumble back behind, because like remember, this is like when they turned a corner, they saw this room, so they all fumbled back behind this corner. The first thing they saw, the reason why they turned around, was the person who walked out of that room was Mr. Herman. Yeah, he was the one hosting the party. And he also, which is the interesting part, he walked out with the subscriber's history teacher. Yeah, the subscriber would never be able to look at the history teacher the same ever again after this point. But anyways, right, that they walked out together. And by the way they walked out, like just by the way that they walked out together, you could tell that, they were only taking one car back, and they were only going home to one house, if you know what I mean. Which, if not disclosed, is completely against school policy. And I don't even think that, like, he can, like, do that even if he did disclose it, just because of, like, the fact that, like, he set the salaries or whatever. So all of a sudden, at that point alone, there was a scandal afoot, right? There was something crazy going on. And then, when, the principal opened the door, right, they had a view inside, and it was a bunch of, like, it was like a bunch of like random guys in their 20s and a bunch of random girls in their 20s. No one who worked at the school, no one who went to the school, which probably was for the better, honestly. That would have been probably much worse. Yeah, no, that actually would have been so much worse if any like kids who went to the school went to like a secret party with the principal. But anyways, right, that would have been much worse. Anyways, it's just a bunch of randos. And the only people that like anyone there recognized was Mr. Herman, the principal, as well as the subscriber's history teacher. So, the subscriber's like, oh my God, we just busted a secret party. And no one knew that they were there yet, right? They kind of like fumbled back behind the scene, like behind the corner. But then the subscriber looks up to like the teacher, the English teacher, to be like, okay, dude, what are we going to do? And he notices the English teacher has his phone out and he's been recording the whole thing. He's like, yep. Mr. Herman, you know him? And the guy's like, yeah, he's right there. He's screwed. And the subscriber's like, oh, okay. Okay. Secret word of the day is principal. So if you made it this far into the video, comment principal in the comment section. I spelled it in the title, but if you need help spelling it, Principal, not PLE. That's something else, right? Anyway, so I just like to see how many people made it this far. I've been getting a lot of comments, which is awesome, but that also means I can't heart as many as I was able to before. But the best way of getting a heart for me is just commenting that down below. And hey, maybe you can farm some hearts and get top commenter. Anyways, back to the story. So at this point, right, the English teacher has video evidence of the principal and the subscriber's history teacher basically going back to the same house. And I don't know if they did at that house. That's not a I don't know that. I don't have firsthand knowledge, but we can infer a few things, as well as hosting a party, most likely secretly behind everyone's back without permission. Also with, the whole, a bunch of randos that no one knows. So pretty bad, right? So, the English teacher's like, okay, guys, like, I'm sorry to cancel this, but we just got to go. We got to get out of here. We got to leave. So they go back to the English teacher's room, right? They grab their stuff and they sneak out like the way they came in, because the way they came in, they never crossed by any, they just didn't cross by anything that would have like alerted them. So they wanted to leave as stealthily as they came in. So they leave through the exit that they came in, and the guy and the principal, not the principal, the English teacher's like, hey guys, like, I might have you guys like come in tomorrow and, talk, like just kind of give your firsthand account. Just be aware of that. And also, please don't say about anything, don't say any of this to anyone before, there's a case. And they're like, a case? Okay. The next day they get to school and, they go to English classes first period. So the subscriber and like the two other like fellow classmates that happen to be there on that day, they all kind of like sit like back in the same place and they're like, dude, what happened? And, then they kind of like, they realize that like no one else is coming to class. So the subscriber checks his email and there's two new, emails in his inbox. The first one is a note from his English teacher saying, we're not having class today. It's canceled. The second one is from the Office of Administration or whatever saying, hey, can you come right now? And it was like, they basically said to come during English class period. So he was like 5 minutes late. He's like, shoot. And the other two kids also got the same two emails. So they run down to the office of like whatever, right? Kind of like the official office. So they run down, they get in there like 7-8 minutes late. They're like, we're so sorry we didn't get your email till now. And the lady kind of running it was like, no, it's totally okay. Like, don't worry about it. And they say, hey, like, your English teacher told us about everything you guys saw. He also gave us the video proof, but we just have a few more questions. So they just kind of asked them to like confirm specific details. They also asked for like their account, just like the whole thing. And they basically, the subscriber explained the story that I explained to you guys. And they were like, wow, yeah. So thank you guys so much for coming in. Please don't speak of this to anyone else. And the subscriber and the friends had not actually, like I kind of expected them to, but they didn't. They kind of like followed what the English teacher wanted them to do. And yeah, so they came in the next day and things kind of seemed normal. But one thing was different. The principal was nowhere to be seen. And within 2 weeks, they had a new principal. Oh, who was still there? Yeah, the subscriber's history teacher. And let me just say that during the rest of the year, he could never look at her the same way, dude. Like every single time she said anything or said anything to him or just anything, right? Just entered her classroom, all he thought about was that night. And he didn't actually say anything, but one thing did slip once, and she kind of gave him a look. But it wasn't obvious, right? But yeah, there we go. Subscribe if you haven't already. Then watch another story video. Bye.